everyone. Thank you for joining me today on Fixin' to Create's Fun Friday. Welcome to Friday. Today's DIY is going to be featuring the Dollar Tree's foam pumpkins. These pumpkins are hollow, so we will be cutting into them. If you do want to participate in this DIY, make sure you do get to your Dollar Tree as quick as possible. They do seem to be going very, very fast, and I know that Dollar Tree is starting to really set up for their Christmas. So anyway, we are going to be featuring these foam pumpkins from Dollar Tree today. There are so many variations you can do with these. You can even stack them as a snowman, so we might be doing a little bit more with them later on for other DIY projects. But for today, we're going to dress up these pumpkins. I really had a hard time deciding exactly what I wanted to do after I did my few examples for the supply list so it can feature what I was going to be doing with them. I just went all over the place. So there are so many various different ways you can dress up your pumpkins or leave them just the way they are. So here and today I'm just going to show you a few examples of what you can do with them, from a very, very simple to much more extravagant depending on what you are looking for or how this applies. So for the sake of this video, I did go ahead and paint one of my pumpkins a base color of white. I just used the loft paint, the artist loft paint from Michaels. As you can see, it's going to take a few different coats to cover the whole thing, but I wanted to take that stark bright orange out of the pumpkin before I go on to my next layer. So for example, we have the supplies. We have our foam pumpkins. We're going to be removing the stem and doing a few things. If you want to use paint, we've got paint as options. Scissors for if you're going to be using ribbon. This is a 2.5 inch wide ribbon. This is a 1.5. Yeah, 1.5 ribbon. This one did come from the Dollar Tree. This one came from Michaels, as well as this one. I did use this one in my example, and I'll show you that too. So this is just a little variety that you can use. Just so many options. I've got my twine if I want to use for bows. I have various different embellishments. I was thinking about doing, a cotton theme. And then of course for stems can range from no stem to squiggles to, you can use wine corks, tree branches. You can bend wire and make your own. So it's just so many options. I've got some moss here if I want to cover, and then of course my hot glue. So I will go ahead and get this kind of cleared out and get started. But again, supplies wise, it seems like it's endless ideas for these really cool pumpkins. So I'm gonna go ahead and get my space cleared out and get started. All right, so I have my 3 pumpkins that I will be showing some examples for today. I have the 3 back here, and you can't really see them on the supply picture from yesterday. So I'll go over those real quick. This one here I did paint. I added a small ribbon, just some cute little embellishments I have. This was kind of more of a richer look. And because I took the basic stem off, but I saved them, I painted them and then used them as feet. And I did that just to raise it up because I did twist this particular twine around instead of cutting it and stuffing it inside, which I'll be showing you how to do. So I wanted to give it a little bit more elegant look and added the little feet. Here I painted one coat white, and then I took the gold paint and just sponged it on. So I didn't make it real heavy, but I did just kind of dab a wet sponge on that. So that's how I got that look. This one we'll be going over using the 2.5 inch ribbon. And I cut a hole, stuffed it, glued it, and then added some embellishments. So we will go over that today in our tutorial. And then the third one, I did paint this one layer of white just to take that starkness of the orange out. And then again, added my stem and then used the wide burlap for that look. So many different options. If you don't want to do that elaborate option, you can always just use fabric. So one of my examples I'm going to go ahead and use today. I have a couple different fall fabrics. These were actually from last year. I used them, in the back of your toilet where you can wrap fabric around toilet paper and just make it a little bit more festive, so if you have guests over and might need an extra roll of TP. So I'm going to be using that today to show you a simpler version of dressing up this pumpkin, maybe a little less permanent because I'm not going to be using any glue. But for someone that has a little bit less supplies or doesn't feel like they are crafty but always try, I'm going to show you that example as well. So first off, the Dollar Tree pumpkins are hollow this year. In the past, they've been a solid foam, and it's really nice because it gives it a little more versatility. I mean, honestly, you could cut this open and do some type of little display inside. You could, you can cut them in half. I've seen people split the pumpkins in half and use them as a welcome sign, the long wooden welcome signs, and paint some, fall and have it as a door sign. So there's a lot of different versatility ways to use these pumpkins. But for today, we're going to go ahead and dress them up just as pumpkins. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Like I said, I did paint this one layer of white just to give it a little bit of neutral, less orange. Depending on the type of paint you use, you may only need one coat. In this case, it's a lesser expensive paint from Michaels. It's just a simple, I'll call it a kids craft paint. So it's not very, very thick. So if you want it all white, you might have to do a couple coats if you use that. If you use some of the chalk paints, those are much thicker. So again, it's just depending on what you have. So these stems are really easy. They're on a stick. You're just going to pull them right out. I decided after lots of decision and changing my mind, I'm going to go ahead and stick with painting this one. So first off, because I know I want to paint this one and I'm not going to be painting the other ones, I want to go ahead and paint this right off the bat. That way it has time to dry and then I'll come back. Our other pumpkins, again, these stems come right out if you want to save it for another project, or like what I did with one of my examples, I used them as feet. So we're just going to take off your stem and your tag. Both the top and the bottom look very similar, just without that little rim. And then we're going to take, you can use a hot knife, a box cutter, anything sharp. You can use scissors, but just be really careful. I have an X-Acto knife here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut a hole in the center. And the reason for that is when we take our ribbon, we're going to be gluing it, but we're also going to be stuffing a small portion of it inside. And then same thing we're going to be doing with the other side. So basically you're going to have a pass through, but we're not going to be passing it completely through. It's just going to give us our openings. And the cutout for the bottom is really so the pumpkin can lay flat. You can absolutely just wind it around. However, it's going to make it a puffier bottom. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut sort of in the center. You don't want it too big because you are going to be filling it, but then you also need to, if you're going to use a stem, you want to be able to put your stem in here and not have it fall all the way through. So make sure you cut your foam. Like I said, these are hollow. And so now I have my center. And I'm going to go ahead and do that again for the bottom. And again, this is just to feed the ribbon or yarn, whatever it is you're going to use. I've seen examples where people have taken really fat yarn and used the yarn. I've seen people use twine. So whatever it is that you might be looking for, you know, look-wise. And my circle isn't perfect, but that's okay because again, it's gonna be covered. So make sure you have your glue gun nice and hot and ready to go. If you do not have something to protect your fingers, you might want to either use an old spatula or a paintbrush handle, or you could use your scissors. I have these little finger protectors. I got them at the Dollar Tree. They are a super lifesaver because you're going to be pressing and holding down the ribbon as it glues, and you really want to make sure that it does not burn your fingers. So just a little safety tip there. All right, so I'm going to use this particular ribbon. It's got the little cotton puffums on it. I believe a 12-inch strip is more than enough. A 10-inch strip is a little bit tough from going from top to bottom and be able to tuck it, but if you're limited to your fabric that you're using, I would say go ahead and use a 10-inch. In this case, I'm going to go ahead in between those two and I'm going to measure out 11 inches. And when I did my example with the other ribbon here, I have 12 pieces. So depending on how much overlay you want, how much you want it, and of course how wide the ribbon is going to determine how many pieces you're going to need. So I'm going to go ahead, I have my yardstick here. I'm just going to go ahead and measure off 11 inches, use my scissors here, and cut that off. So you've got, my 11-inch strip. Go ahead and repeat that 12 times because I do know that with this 2.5-inch ribbon and this width, it is going to take me 12 pieces. Okay, I have finished cutting my 12 pieces of this particular. So this one has obviously a pattern to it, different than a plaid or something else that is a continuous pattern. This is a continuous pattern, however, you can see the design is going one way. So just word of caution, make sure your design is going the same direction if it is a pattern like this versus a plaid that can go up or down any which way. So all we're going to be doing is taking just an inch or so, a little bit less, tucking it down, tucking it in and wrapping it around, and then tucking it into the bottom hole as well. I would say play with it, see if you like it just the way it is, if you want it to have, a little bit of a pleat. Then when you're satisfied with your first set, I would go ahead and tap a little glue here and then do the same thing for the bottom there. Make sure you have your finger protector because when you reach in there through the ribbon, it is going to be hot. So I'm just going to take my glue gun here and set it. And like I said, if you are limited to your materials and you're afraid that you're not going to have enough, a 10-inch length seems to be okay. It's not going to give you as much overhang on the top and the bottom, but it seemed to work pretty well for the pumpkin of this size. Now, if you're using maybe a pumpkin you found at Walmart or one of the other places, that may change your how many pieces you need or how long you need, I should say. So again, that finger protector is keeping that heat away from my finger as well as the glue. So really that is the process in laying your ribbon down if you're going to be using ribbon. If you want it a little more flat, you can definitely run some glue down the sides and holding that down before you lay your next piece. So depending on which way you want it to lay, I tend to move in this direction. I'm going to be repeating that process. If it has a pattern and you really want it to line up, by all means, go ahead and try to line up that pattern. For me personally, I'm not super formal, and I just am going to lay it down and kind of let it do its own thing. Very end. Okay. I am down to actually the last piece. So originally I said even use, let's just go with 11 pieces. I think I want to have a little bit more coverage and not stretch myself thin. So we'll go ahead and get these last piece glued down. My rechargeable hot glue gun just kind of pooped out on me, so I'm going to use the squeaky one again, so I apologize. So we're going to get those last ends here glued down. Getting that tucked in. And I just have that little bit peeking through. So I could have stretched that 10th piece out, but because I have the pieces, you know, I'm going to go ahead and give it a full coverage. If you have small hands helping you out with this, by all means, as you can see, you don't have to glue it. Once they start laying on top of each other, they really kind of just stick in the hole. It really depends on the ribbon. This being a wire ribbon versus more of a loose unwired ribbon might make that difference. So, all right, I'm putting in my last piece here. I glue this little side down. And there you have it. So now we have a ribbon. I really like the colors. I thought it was going to be too busy, and again, that's just personal preference. You might find that this is too busy. You can see the orange shining through just a little bit. So again, if you didn't want any of that bright orange to shine through in what you're working with, you can give it a coat of paint. So now we are going to go on to our stem. Do a traditional limb. So I think I'm going to go ahead and wind this cork up with twine, like I did before. And just by coloring it, you can paint it, you know, just a different variety. So I'm going to go ahead, all I'm going to do is just wind this twine around this cork and push it down. So there, it is not perfect. This other one I did was a little laid out a little bit differently. So there is my little stem. I want to add some little curlicue. Just like any of the coverings, you can use as many embellishments as you want. You could even use washi tape, if you know what that is. I think I'm just going to make it real simple and just keep with the theme of the cotton. So I'm going to go ahead, my squeaky gun, add some glue. I'm going to call that done. So what do you think? A little busy. All right, so let's go with a simpler style, simpler process. No glue. We're just going to, this would be great for if you have small children and you want them to all create their own, either by painting it, that's an option, or we're going to use the fabric. So again, just going to pull my stem out. I'm going to use that later. And so here is it's basically like a 2x2. This one's kind of an off size. All I'm going to do is lay that out here. Again, being my top. Actually, first I know I'm going to tie it off with some twine. So I'm going to get my twine ready so I don't have to let go of this. I'm just going to cut a piece of twine to have that off to the side. Going to take my corner to corner here and grab the other corners here. And you can make this pleated as perfect as you want. You can make it as rugged as you want, however you want your pumpkin. I know they say that a lot, but really it truly is. You can sit here and pleat it, or you can just make it as fun as you want. So all I'm doing is gathering the material, getting those corners up. If you need to use hot glue because something's poking out, by all means, but it is not necessary. And all I'm going to do for this particular example is I'm just going to run this twine around the pumpkin fabric, hold it really tight, pull it tight, and make a bow. How cute is that? It's so simple. Again, you can use the pumpkin just as it is from the Dollar Tree. You can dress it up. You can pull it around. You can make some twigs coming out of it. Again, always endless possibilities here. So that's a great fun one if you want to, use for small fingers. You can do the same design without using the twine and cutting a hole in the center and stuffing the fabric in, and then making kind of like the toilet paper rolls. And I'm doing that same process. Let me go ahead and show you that real quick. Again, cutting a sizable hole, just enough to be able to get whatever fabric or ribbon that you are using into this hole and secure it so it doesn't pop out. So in this process, what I would do is take a corner, and this is here where you can definitely get some decent pleats in, and all you're going to do is just take it around and around. So it's the same fabric as I just showed you, but a different look by just changing the way that you're folding and maneuvering the fabric. That is all. And just, you can have a little stem there or continue stuffing it all the way down inside, playing with your pleats, tucking it and pulling it. And then again, if you want a stem or embellishments, here's a fun one I managed to get off my tree. So I've got just a little greenery there. I can add some moss to make it a little more green. I think I'm going to do that. And this was actually cut from my tree that I have. And so it does smell like my tree. So if you're going to use something that's live, be careful. Make sure, you know, it doesn't become too dry and becomes a fire hazard or anything like that. So I'm going to go ahead and glue the bottom there and just stick it on there. So this one is much more alive than the others. And let's see, what else can we add? A little splash of color. How about we do a little sunflower? Just add that splash of color somewhere on there. All right, so again, very simple. Depending on the material you're going to use, it's going to either go a lot quicker. We're still waiting for the paint to dry on the other ones. You can see that in this process, you just want to sort of plan ahead, but you can always change your mind as you go along. So let's go ahead and check the other pumpkin to see if the paint is dry, and then go from there. It does look like it is dry, so that's wonderful. I'm going to use this Dollar Tree polka dotted one. So let's go ahead. You wouldn't be able to see through it if this was still orange. Again, I know I don't have full 9 feet here, so I'm going to go ahead and make 10-inch strips on this one. I know they're going to go around, but I also want to make sure I have enough. So I'm going to have to be a little bit more careful on this one because it is such a smaller roll. So I'm going to go ahead and show you with this polka dotted roll. So, all right, so I have my 10-inch pieces of my Dollar Tree polka dotted ribbon, burlap ribbon, ready to go on this foam pumpkin that is now nice and dry. You can do this without cutting a hole if you just want to layer those, but again, once you get to the very end, laying your pumpkin flat, it could be kind of wobbly. So I am going to go ahead and cut a very small, not quite as big a hole. We got a little too carried away with those other ones. I'm going to get a little bit smaller hole. This ribbon is smaller as well, so it's not going to be as bulky. Oops, sorry for that squeak. And these top piece fell in the center, but that doesn't really matter. So we're just going to go with a smaller hole and see how that works. So again, these are a 10-inch pieces, so these are not going to go into the pumpkin quite as far. But I do know that the 10-inch works. My ribbon around my pumpkin, and like I said, I had already used part of that roll, so I was finger crossed I was going to have enough ribbon to go around the pumpkin. I didn't. I do have one extra piece, so I spaced it out a little bit more, and because I colored it, I think it's pretty cute. So I have now a different style pumpkin with the ribbon, and I have this one leftover piece, so I'm just going to go ahead and just kind of make a little bit of a bow and put it on there. I was looking for a stem that I liked to go with this one. I happen to make some burlap ribbon, burlap flowers, and I have one that is black and tan, so I'm just going to go ahead and get that guy kind of shoved in there if I can. Again, it doesn't have to be a traditional stem. It can be whatever it is that you find works for your decor. If you want to give these out as a gift the holiday time, whatever, it's just a fun activity. The base of it being the Dollar Tree foam pumpkin. So having that base inexpensive kind of makes me feel like I can kind of do different things. So by shoving it down there, it's kind of you see that, a very different look than the other more traditional or whimsical pumpkins. So just so you can see, for me to make a really simple bow, I'm not a huge bow maker. Watch the fingers and put my little rubber finger guard back on. So I'm going to let that set. And then I have this short little piece here that was left over. It wasn't a quite 10-inch piece. I'm going to add a little bit of extra to it. So I'm going to cut another fabric. I think they complement each other pretty well. I'm just going to add a dab of glue on it in the center, just so I don't have to keep playing with it. Try to keep it in the center. Kind of find my center here, and I'm going to be using that and kind of squish that down and make that my center for my bow. And again, for this piece that I glued as a circle, I'm going to squish that down and pinch it. And I'm going to pinch this. And these are going to be my pieces coming down. So I'm going to go ahead and same thing here. I'm going to add a piece of that fall ribbon around it. So same process. Just going to cut it about the same length. I am going to glue it, that way it stays in place and I don't have to fight it too much. Grab some more glue. I really hope that you guys are enjoying these DIY projects. You can tell they don't always go quite as planned, but that's what makes them unique for you. I like to be able to do something fairly quick. Each of these pumpkins, again, depending on the way that you design it, can be extremely quick. or it can have more detail in it and take a little bit longer. So you can definitely come back to it later on, like in the paint process. So paint, go do something else, come back, you know, that kind of thing. All right, so I think will work as a bow. All right, together about the center, hold that and twist it as tight as I can. Hold that and then play with that. To cover up that twist tie, you can cut a little piece, or I would normally cut those off. So that's a basic bow. Again, making that loop, finding that center piece, pinching it off. I have these tail pieces here, bending it in half and hooking it together, and then glue them on. But actually, I think it does kind of stuffs in there. And there you have a third pumpkin. So quite the variety. Like I said, there's so many ways you can use these pumpkins, and even way more than just doing this. So if you are interested, look up foam pumpkin on Pinterest, or just, you know, in a Google search, and there's just so many different projects you can do with them. I know this video was a little bit longer, but I wanted to give you a little bit of versatile ways to be able to do this. So hopefully you like these ideas. Please comment, please share if you do the project in the comments below. And I appreciate you watching today's Fixin' to Create's DIY foam pumpkin project. Thank you so much. See you soon.